think I posted it along with the event thing, but assume that no one has it.
Yeah, I never looked at the posting, but basically just picking up the priority tasks from the last meeting, which I saw as development of a meter installation plan, the staffing issues, Derby sewer contract, and your map has to do with metering, I'm guessing?
Yes, yeah.
So
These are last week's minutes. Kind of. Is this just flickering a lot?
Yeah, can you send that to all of us, Patrick?
Yeah.
Please?
It's not super.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Let's just turn that one off, shall we?
Yeah.
Maybe if someone
Far
has
left.
seizure. Okay, this is. Oh wait, yeah, Carl.
He had a conflict.
Make yourself comfortable, Frank.
Okay.
So, anytime you're ready, jump right in.
Yeah. Oh wait, that's wrong. There we go. So those are all like meter properties. So I'm pulling out data like that. I'm bringing it into a place where we can work with it and actually edit things, because you can only observe essentially in the city's web map. So we have download data. We have the meter waypoints for all these properties where the meter radio tag tells you where it might be, but they're not perfectly actually all located discreetly within the tax map parcel, right? So I had to go through and like move the dots on some of these, which is a huge pain in the ass, and I might have missed one or two, or maybe more, who knows. So then I can associate the meter that has an address associated with that to the parcel that has the same address associated with it. So then we can pull out all those metered properties from the grand list. So that is what, so all of these blue dots are the metered properties. Just for curiosity's sake, these are the private wells that I can find for this area, because we got to make sure that we're not trying to prioritize metering somebody who's on a well. And so I also don't know if this is entirely accurate of private wells, but it's from the state's registry of wells, and you have to have them registered when you get them drilled. So maybe there's some people who are getting like spring boxes and shit like that, but the most
So
part.
every one of those little boxes is somebody who's on a well.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so you can see only a couple are actually in the city limits.
Oh, okay, all right.
So it's for everybody. But so these are the parcels that were metered according to either private wells or city meters. Sorry, these are the parcels we can disregard because they either have private wells or meters, right? So we got that. And I'll be honest with you, there's a different discrepancy between how many properties live in this file of metered properties. I only see 652. So it's 652 geotagged parcels with meters. So either,
Which we think is probably 2/3 of what there actually are.
well, there's supposed to be 730. There's 730 in what comes off of the website.
Right.
Some of those got pulled out because they were just disregarded because they're meter properties. We're not interested in that.
So where did the number that we kept throwing around of 1,000 to 1,100 metered properties come from?
That came off of Stacy's reports, where they.
They're 1,072 meters.
Right.
Okay. So either we don't have them all mapped.
Probably not.
Okay.
This is a layer that we just started maybe a year ago.
Island.
I see,
We
okay.
created this layer.
Okay.
So yeah, there's probably some that,
So this is incomplete, it doesn't supersede the other information?
I don't think so.
I've got the data by streets, et cetera, because I got
By,
the
like,
billing
Number
data.
and street. Okay. Well,
Or street and
that
number, but
that would be helpful when we need to review this list. So these red parcels are all parcels that are unmetered, that are theoretically unwelled, or do not have a well, and are reasonably located within all of the mapped curb stops, which turn on and off people's water at the main. Let me just make this bigger so everybody can see. So those are all curb stops that are on the city's mapping system. So that indicates that there is water service down those streets, and that the main doesn't just stop at the blue line right here, that it continues into this neighborhood. But we'll notice that only some of these properties that have curb stops have wells. So those guys, everything that's not red needs a meter. So same situation across the city. So we have some odd number, we have a lot of parcels that are unmetered. Right now that's 1,116. So I went through all of these unmetered parcels and pulled out road right-of-ways, railroad right-of-ways, river lots, vacant lots, undeveloped building lots, wetlands, private well, private well, parking areas, undeveloped lots without buildings, slivers. There's a lot of slivers of properties that are just junk. It's like a corner between two roads. You're like, it's nobody's property. It's just a glitch. So there was a lot of that. So we removed like 200 junk potentials. So what we're left is with like just cross-referencing what we understand to be an unmetered, non-well serviced house or commercial business within reasonable proximity to a curb stop. Then we can assume that they need a meter. And so there's 1,100 of those. So that's what the data we got. We can go through that list of 1,100, and if I can get her list of metered properties, I can make sure that none of those metered properties are in that 1,100 number.
Because almost certainly 200 or 300 are.
If their record of meters or Stacy's record of meters installed is true number,
Yeah.
and what we got is
the bills, so,
yes.
yeah.
So then we can clean up another couple hundred.
Got it.
But at the moment, we got a lot. And so the next step is like, okay, we can prioritize these things. So I don't even know if I want to go through all 1,100, especially if it's not in a table that I can just like do a comparison. But what we could do is if we want to get 300 meters prioritized, we can check the 300 and make sure that none of Stacy's metered properties are in the subset, right?
Yep.
So, but like just for reference, like out of the 1,100 unmetered parcels, there are 121 parcels that have listed improvements. That's a building or an outbuilding or something like that in excess of $150,000. So some of them are almost $2 million, and some of them are $150,000. There's a lot below $150,000 of improvements, meaning your house is not worth more than $150,000 according to the lister, meaning you're probably not that many bedrooms, that many bathrooms, or you don't have a large lot, so you may or may not be using a lot of water. Probably not, probably less water. The bigger the property, the more value, there's probably more water usage, right? So that's one way we can prioritize. Another is, pulling out the commercial, farm, industrial properties, getting those metered first. There's only 41 of those. That might make sense.
Error because we got 16, I think, according
Sure.
to these.
Yeah, there might be 25 that we think is unmetered that are not. There are
Not
actually.
commercial, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say commercial, Patrick?
Yeah, commercial, industrial,
They're
farm,
not metered.
potentially 41. But that includes a couple farm. That includes Bluffside Farm, which they don't use any water. They got like 2 people. One person living there and 2 people going there once a week for an office. Like
And
that.
garden.
But they've got the community garden out there too.
I can't imagine the garden's on. Is the garden on a well? Are you guys servicing the whole property?
The water goes up to the farm.
It does.
I don't know if they
We use
have anything that splits off down there, I'm not
a
sure.
lot.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that might be a big water user.
Yeah.
And then Frank is going to help me get this data, which comes from, when you click on one of these properties, you get this card, right? So there's a bunch of information associated with each building that is associated with each property. And so I can prioritize that list based on the building value, the living area, the number of bedrooms or baths or half baths. There's like descriptions of the bathroom and kitchen. I'm like, okay, it's got that information. Most of these are probably going to be empty, like, kitchen description. Average. Okay, what is that? What is that? So I assume if it's like a commercial grade kitchen, it might say something, but it's not really a reliable proxy for water usage. So like, but this is what we can say like, okay, properties with more than 2 bedrooms, let's just focus on those and see what we get. So like that's what we can do with the information we have. If I can pull, if we can get what you're saying Stacy has in a table with the street and the number.
Tell me what you want, because I have to manipulate it no matter what.
I just want I want spans. You know what span is, right?
Yeah.
Span,
I
We
don't.
don't-
What's a span?
Span number?
school, property.
It's what you
Yeah.
file on your tax return.
It's like a parcel ID.
Yeah, it's a
Got it.
parcel
Thank
ID.
you. Okay.
You're
It's a
missing.
state assigned number, or the first 5 digits of it are state assigned, and every separate parcel in Vermont has a unique span number.
I think we are at Newport City's 136.
136 is the first
Yeah.
3 digits.
Yeah, so that's all of
But
Newport City.
the first 3 digits identify the municipality,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Honestly, I think the first 6 do.
every municipality has a unique
No,
span
it's
number.
only 3.
And then quirky ones like Barton actually have multiple because they have multiple school districts.
Yeah. So it's all about
Towns.
type of school.
It's really tied to the local school district.
Yeah.
But Newport Cities is 136.
So what I can't do is mailing address. Mailing address blows it all apart. I need physical address.
Okay, most of these are, I'm trying to think if all of them are divided. All are divided by physical address. There is no span. There
Okay, that's fine.
is
Deal with it.
our, meter number type thing, account number.
It's kind of useless for me.
Yeah. Well, this is okay because NIMRIC, if you print it out, you can add up the dollar column. You cannot add the gallons column. I have to convert them and then
So it's not a number, it's a text.
it's a text. And there's no way, I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to manipulate within it. Because if you have 700 of them, it's a pain in the ass, but yeah.
And that, the water data, do we have surface line size?
I don't know.
It is on the cards.
It might be on the tie cards.
It is on the tie cards,
It's on the
Oh, really?
cards.
but it does not,
What is a tie card?
So if you go back to that parcel you were on.
it's on in our billing records. We do know that.
So,
Okay.
And
there's a tie.
99% of them are, the 1 inch.
Oh, tie into the main.
Well, it's ties to the core or the main.
Yeah. It's literally a card to issue where you tied it.
Right.
Yep, yep.
Oh my god, I didn't
Some-
know these existed. That's
Oh,
great.
yeah.
So this is how you find ones where there's 8 inches of grass over them. The curves up. Okay.
Well, between, this is the old
Or
way.
metal
that we've
detector
done
or
it, and we
something.
scanned all these in each parcel, but now everything you see there's GPS on there. Of course, GPS is good to a couple feet, 20
On a
feet.
bad day.
depends. Yeah,
Because
depends.
the surface line size is also an indication of who should get a meter first.
So that's not digitized.
Right.
No. You don't have that many. I mean, you got 16 commercial, and to be honest, they're bullshit commercials.
The problem is if you're gonna have to go
Right,
to
but-
every parcel like that.
Yeah.
It's.
I've never seen them.
So we're-
So,
oh,
you know, I'd like to,
Things
you
were in
know,
there.
Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, if we can see,
Yeah, you gotta
It may not.
questioning your evaluation,
Usually
but
it tell you right up in here, so.
if you look at the things
Oh,
that
okay.
are
3/4
classified,
to half.
it's like,
So it's reduced.
So it's
around-
probably 3/4 going in the house and it's
These
half
are the
inch in the
flat
house.
rates.
So
These are
3/4 on our
that's the
side and
one we've
on
got.
their side's half inch.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the old properties in Newport are just a half inch.
Okay, that seems small.
Yeah.
Mine may still be half inch. over on
Oh,
the
it
west
probably
side.
is.
Okay. All right.
So the actual water line coming into the house is only half an inch?
Yeah.
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 Oh, you'd be surprised, some of even the apartment houses might only have a 3/4 or an inch feeding 5, 6 apartments.
Yeah, the different layers that we've seen with the wells and the meters and so on, Are those limited to ones that have GPS coordinates? Or are there some of the older ones in there that predate GPS? So I was thinking of the well one particularly because those well reports have been filed for over 40 years, but
Well, the
GPS
well
obviously
report
isn't
is
that
something
old.
you've come up with.
Yeah, that's through the state.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so, anything that he's on our map, anything that's on there, it was is within the last 6 to 8 years was GPS by us.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of the older meters don't necessarily have the technology that the new ones do in terms of even appearing on that map, and that may account for some of the discrepancy, but older wells may not appear either because wells that were installed prior to GPS, for instance, I know where I used to live in Derby, the well was drilled in 1978, which predates GPS, and the well report does not even have a line to enter the location of a well in the way that the new well reports do, which is a specific GPS reading. It just generally says it's on the front lawn of a 14-acre lot.
Yeah.
So, that's really useful.
Yeah, and there's nothing we can do about that. Unless, if we issue a notice that they're getting a well and they can provide proof that they're not hooked up to the city, or, it's probably on us to confirm before we even send the letter, but, not that I will be sending this letter, but, I guess we come up with a short list and then we screen the list with your documentation before we put a stamp on it or something.
Well, there's not many areas in the city that we don't service.
Yeah, your curb stops are everywhere.
Well, if you go out to the end of Farron Street, there are a couple of places out there that drill wells.
They have drilled, actually somebody else just drilled another well out there because they're turning it into a year-round place.
Yeah.
We can only supply seasonally.
Right. Okay. I think that's all I have. I'll let you know what I can come up with if I can use some of the data that Frank's database has, and we can start talking about how to choose which ones get meters first, but I don't think that's happening in the next 2 months. So,
So I just want to understand the implications of kind of what's behind your thinking about this mapping, Patrick. The reason you're investing so much time and energy into this is because by the time you get it fine-tuned, you think that's going to be the easiest way for us to say, okay, here's how we're going to prioritize this set of variables
for
first.
his guys to go and look at the hookup and say, can we do this cost effectively? Because some of them are going to be rejects when you're like, we can't do this, you can't access it or whatever.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you that from this, but I can
see.
at least give you a short list of
That's helpful.
higher priority potential water users. And you guys can go and take your best shot at it.
It'd be nice, for me, looking at it, it'd be nice to say, okay, we're down in the bluffs and we've got 80% of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see
if we can finish the
let's
last
finish
Yeah,
the section.
If you can close loops, then you can start doing mass balance on losses too.
Exactly.
So that's another way to do it.
Yeah. The biggest part is, we did the lead and copper last year, and you can hang out all the door hangers you want, and if they don't call you back or they don't answer the door, you're not gonna get access. You're not gonna get their information as far as a phone number, an email, so you can schedule to do this. Ideally, it'd be nice if they went to a place, they could say, okay, we'll investigate it. If it's something they could do and the people are there, hey, it might take a half hour and they could put it in. Or, hey, we're gonna have to modify it, we'll have to come back, this is a bigger job. So there's quite a bit of time involved just in the investigation part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it, I'm looking at you, Paul, because I suspect you've had this experience around enforcement in Champlain Water District. Let's say that we start down this road and we say, okay, we want to finish those last 20%, that mythical number on the bluffs, right? And we hang out door hangers and send them note, and 60% of those respond and the other 40% don't. At what point do we have an option to say, you have 2 months to proactively reach out. We've tried 3 times to knock on your door. You now have 2 months in which you can reach out to us and schedule this. And if you don't, we will simply begin to give you a surcharge on your water bill that is outrageous.
So that is a possibility, and you can also shut their water off,
See,
which I know.
Both of those are going to make me super popular.
I don't know as if you could, maybe you can, maybe it is illegal the way, anytime we've ever been told to go shut a water off, I guarantee you within an hour, the state's calling me and turn it back on.
So
You'd have to really make sure you're legally doing it.
you do,
Because,
but I can tell you right now,
They got kids living in the
everybody in
house.
Chittenden County gets shut off with
There's
no
something
payment.
else for you to consider, however. Your ordinance, that it does not give you any authority in this
Right.
area.
That's
Because
number one.
although the council said X, Y, and Z over the 10 years, the ordinance itself was never updated, okay, to include that this is mandated in any regard whatsoever, or imposes any policy or procedure for any penalty.
So council as water commissioners don't have the authority to make this decision and then enforce it?
They have the
The ordinance has to be updated.
The ordinance, which is on our list, is to update the ordinance, and that was part of
I gotcha. Okay.
my phase 1 stuff. They've got a certain individual that was over there all worked up, was because apparently he was nicer than I was.
Me?
No. If we revise the ordinance
Yeah.
and give the water and sewer department authority to shut people's water off for lack of payment, and we follow the state regulations to do so, we can't do it now because the city has not given itself the authority to do that.
Correct. I understand.
So we need which is why that's on our list.
Yeah, the current ordinance just has a set of fairly vague cross-references to the state shut-off enabling act.
Right.
It needs to really be fleshed out,
And there is a state shut-off enabling.
which is
So
very comprehensive.
in addition to that, Rick, the reality of it is that the idea of being able to mandate something without having it stated within your ordinance, even if you wanted to mandate it, you don't have the authority at this particular point to do so.
Okay, so I'm with you.
Yep.
So I guess what I hear you saying is that's kind of phase 1, Paul.
Yeah, we need to get on the ordinance.
And it seems like before we make any effort to start targeting a particular group of users for meters, we ought to put the ordinance underneath us so that we can do something if they refuse to comply.
Well, I don't think so. I think we can start targeting, and we will have people willing.
Yes.
I mean,
So we take advantage of that.
we take advantage of the willing people, and then the unwilling people are.
We build the ordinance
We
and
build the
enforce it as
ordinance.
we are able.
Right, exactly.
And there are people who signed up, and potentially when you go into the next set of rates, you probably have more.
Yeah.
And we have not been fulfilling, the meters.
Yes.
Because of staffing, because we left, it was the finance committee, and one of the members there said, when am I gonna get my meter?
Yeah.
I've put my name on the list. So I think we've got a built-up demand
We
that
do.
can be met.
Right.
But,
We just gotta figure out how to pay for that demand
And
and go for it.
one of the interesting things is, Patrick brings up in a sort of side way, there are probably properties in the city of Newport that are not being currently billed.
Not
There's-
currently billed?
Yeah, the people don't know they have water. Stacy told me about one that sold in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Where
You don't have one all
the
of a
lawyer
sudden.
came and said, how are they on their water and sewer bills? And everybody went, huh? We've got one which I have to ask Tom about, which we have water. It's in a place where I'm not sure where the water goes. But I was sitting there, it popped up. But, I'll talk to Tom about it. They don't have sewer. Where's the water going? Either
Well,
drip-
there's quite a few places that have just water and
Yeah.
we
Septic or-
we don't, they have their own septic.
Yeah. and-
Now, it's
and
your
those are one
situation, you
things.
said.
Yeah.
It's
and then-
mine.
Sure.
I have water.
Yeah.
Right, too, yeah.
Which is, that's logical. In
Or it's just too
the
far out. She
downtownish
lives up in
area,
Watch
it's
Tower.
not necessarily logical.
We
It
don't
depends
go
on the
as
area.
far away. We
area.
don't go there.
Yeah.
I just keep trying to think of the order of operations, right?
Well,
So-
I don't, I mean, it's to a degree, I think we can have an order, but for the most part, we need to be attacking at all the
Working
different.
simultaneously.
Right, right.
But the very first thing, let me try again, tell me why this isn't the first thing. So is the very first thing that we've just got to go find some money? So that when we say we want to target this group of people, we can actually follow through and do it.
Right.
Yes.
First group
Right.
of people to target are the ready, willing, and on the
Well,
list.
But there's no point in going after that
Until
if we don't know
we-
how we're going to install the meters when they say yes.
Exactly.
And that's
I
where.
mean, we need to find the money, and then we also, I guess I can jump right into, Tom and I had a meeting, where we discussed, private putting something
Yes.
out to bid versus, our own in-house people. Tom will, if things keep going, you're thinking 4 months, you'll have your 4 people that are, with all of them being trained, right? 3 to 4 months, you're thinking your new guy.
That's probably rushing it, but
Yeah.
I mean,
So one of our thoughts was, and it ties in well to this targeted area, is let's pick a targeted area. Let's do a test case with our own people, with a defined schedule, and see how that works before we jump overboard and put a large scale project out to bid. The good news is, as from the email you guys saw, we can do that. We could, if we needed to, and we had the funds, we could put a large scale out to bid with it, one general plumbing permit. We don't need individual.
Yes, I did see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Individual permits for each house, which is huge. It would just be spot inspections.
Yeah.
So that's not just if it's put out the bid, that's if it's done in mass, right? Like, we can do it in mass ourselves and issue, and get one permit issue, it doesn't have to.
we don't need it.
We don't need a
Oh,
permit.
right.
Right, it's only if we bid it, we get, and they can do it with just one permit.
Right, correct.
For a defined area,
We would,
Or we
so
would
we
need
have
the
to
permit,
give,
everything included.
we have to give them a list of each address.
got it.
So if there was 800 houses we were gonna hit, there'd have, on that permit, it'd have to be all 800 addresses. And then at the conclusion of the project, they would just do individual spot checks to make sure that the plumber had done stuff to code.
And
And
the
in
state,
theory-
the state does.
Can we, in theory at least, can we come up with, a steady or consistent or reliable average of the cost of the equipment, the meter itself, and any related materials needed for the installation, so that if we said, okay, we're gonna do a target and see what it takes for our staff to do 200 of these, and we can reliably estimate that each one of them is gonna cost approximately this much, some maybe a little more, some a little less, we would know what the city has to put out in order to get that test done.
So I think it will be easier to do that once we pick a targeted area, because Tom and his guys are, for the lead and copper sampling, are going in, they've got their, and jump in anytime here. They've got a lead and copper spreadsheet, and they also have pictures of each place that they've gotten into. So with those pictures, we'll have service size, we'll know if it's a quick in and out, we'll know. So we can do a better average on a targeted area than we can just by blindly saying, okay, a meter's this much, these 2 fittings are this much.
We can actually go through and be pretty careful about each
Right.
installation.
Just because the lead and copper is being done by neighborhood?
Is it being done by neighborhood, the lead and copper? or
By
is it-
street.
By street, yeah.
So the idea is you would, find funding and then put a lump of addresses in for like a few streets in one permit, is that what you're suggesting?
If we decided to go put it out to bid.
And if the city does
But if the city does it, we can just take a zone, compare that zone to his lead and copper spreadsheet with the pictures, then we can develop an estimate pretty quickly, I would think, once we get updated costs from Thai sales. The other thing that Tom and I talked about is we need to consider scale of economy. We should talk to Thai sales and say, okay, if we buy
up to 1,000 meters.
1,000 meters for a small, for the larger chunk versus buying 100 meters,
What kind
then
of economy of scale can we get?
what can we get? That might lead us to saying, okay, maybe we want to investigate putting this whole thing out to bid.
All right, and just to make sure I understand, I want to go back to something I think Lori put in front of us, or maybe it was just in front of the finance team.
No,
The possibility that we could contract for somebody else to own the meters for a period of time and then sell them to us at the end of the process.
So you got a contact for a meter through Joe, right? Did you
Yeah.
find that information?
I didn't.
Okay.
But I'm just gonna reach out to Joe. So there's a company that I went to a class last week, and there's an engineer I used to work with that mentioned a company that does the installs. He said they're top notch.
And they own the meter?
No,
they
I
install
think
it?
we'd have to fund it. They're just a company that would come in here and they would, that's all they do. And
Put in
they've
meters?
figured it out.
And then we should check, I mean, I can reach out to Joe too, it doesn't.
No, that's fine.
We should see if Suez still has that. The Suez one is the one where now, this was 8 years ago when I left, they were starting up that division. So we need to see if that came to fruition or if it didn't. But that was the one where you basically, they come in and get you upgraded, and then you, like with
It's
our
like,
water
it's like
tank.
solar panels, right?
We're paying a yearly fee to them for a 15-year contract.
Right.
Yes, and then eventually at the end of the process, we own it because we've paid that amount over time.
That's exactly what you're doing with the water tank. Or the city's doing with the water tank now, same company.
and the one I have is through Farm Credit Leasing
Yeah.
and through CoBank in Colorado.
Right.
And
So-
they just do, we do all the legwork, we put the whole package together, and then we take it to them to get financing.
Right.
And it's a lease.
So that would be putting our package together, putting it out to bid for a local plumber
Right.
and that
And then
stuff.
present it to them.
Right.
And once, and their whole situation is, the last time I talked to them is because they know that small cities like us and, rural America need that kind of assistance, and that's why they're doing it. But they're gonna wanna do like wholesale, like everything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, they need their own economy of scale.
We're gonna need to like take the whole thing to them
Yeah.
because you have to present, there's a lot of stuff for them.
Yeah, they're
And they have
going-
other financing, I mean, they finance vehicles,
Right.
like the Vector truck, they do leasing
Right.
for things like that. I mean, I recognize what it is, but it's really a financing tool.
Right.
that-
And they're,
But for our purposes, effectively, we've got two choices. We either, well, maybe three.
Right.
We find a way to fund it through grant funding and money we raise through our own water and sewer rates, one. Or we borrow money ourselves in order to pay the upfront costs, and then we build the payment of that borrowing into our water and sewer budget. Or three, we do what Lori's proposing. We go out, find a company, and effectively lease the equipment and build that into our water and sewer budget, right? Those are kind of our three options. Now, is there another option I'm missing? Yeah, I think
The
that's,
state doesn't provide any sort of grant for.
well, okay, so that's a great question. So I've now begun to build this relationship with Neil Cammons and Patrick, can't remember his last name, do you remember, Larry? From the parent is the State Environmental Commission, and they are the water Conservation Board, Patrick. No, it's spelled Paidric, Patrick.
I think last name was Monk.
Yes, that's it, Patrick Monks, right? He was on a call with us the other day trying to help us work on options around financing. But feels like maybe this is a question we ought to take to the two of them to say, what do you know about what's out there for us as creative ways that we can try and finance the completion of our meters and see if they have any ideas?
We've never put it out there if it, just their regular SRF loans, if that's within that. I mean, right now, currently, SciSav water main project is on their priority list, although it's been on there for 2 years, so. That being said, there's funding out there for certain stuff, but whether you meet all the criteria and you get enough points to be the next one on the list to get picked.
Whatever happened to the fact that we were doing the water tower, the reservoir cover, and meters? And that was the full package.
It was added in, but again, what if we bonded for, well, we didn't really actually bond, but it was part of that project.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I guess, looking at it, financing wise, could still be an option depending on where we are
Because it
within
was
what
supposed to be in there.
the taxpayers approved to bond for.
Yeah.
So, one part of the conversation that Tom and I had, which I think is gonna be vitally important going forward for projects, is that when the city is taking advantage of grants and an in-kind contribution is required, you're gonna have, because of the limited staffing, you're going to have to be very careful about saying, okay, we'll cover this much with staffing.
Yeah.
That's not realistic. It's going to have to be somehow a financial in-kind so that the staff we have can focus on the regular.
Yes, our match can't be in-kind provision of labor.
Correct.
Gotcha. Yep. I totally get it.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing Paul and I talked about was, actually trying, even we could maybe possibly look at this before we even look at the financing part. The more we put in, the cheaper it's going to be down the road. But,
Right.
And as I told Paul, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've got a lot of grants that Public Works was always tied to. We physically did a lot of the work. So I guess what I'm saying is, if the council was in agreement that we certainly still have a certain amount of stuff we have to maintain. Like the summer months, we have line striping, we've got mowing, we got just regular maintenance going on. But if we're not looking at other grants out there, we finish up the 2 I'm currently on, and then I concentrate on, because I still have to get back to my lead and copper, and that's not going away.
No, it's not.
So I could still on that, but yet at the same time be possibly putting meters in.
Can you help me understand, Tom, what's left in completing the lead and copper work?
A lot.
Like, say more about that, just because I don't know that I've been in a conversation
Well,
yet where we...
so the investigation isn't, so we have 1,795 city water connections. So it's really double that. You're actually, I need to know from the main to the curb stop, which is the property valve, what that line is made up of material-wise, and then from that valve into the house.
Oh my God.
So it's twofold.
How do you do that without digging a hole?
Some cases you're not. We're gonna get to a point where we're gonna be testing water to see if it tests for lead.
So this isn't just like a kitchen sink water test that you're doing to see if it's in the water?
We haven't got to that point yet. But again, we've probably got maybe half, maybe.
Can
I mean,
I make a suggestion, and I can be shot down on it because it just came up to me, and it probably isn't right. But what about there are some people out there that really want a meter, And if we said to them, because of the finances of the city right now, we want to put meters in, but we don't have the upfront money to do it, would you pay for your water installation, your water meter installation, whatever it is, $400, $500 upfront? And what we will do to pay you back is over the next 5 years, we'll give you whatever the equivalent is, 20% off of your water bill for the next number of years that it takes to give you back that $500. So you're having your citizen pay for the financing, and probably you're not going to give him any interest on it, so you're getting a free loan. And you've got a number of people that have enough money to put the money in up front, want a meter now. They've been wanting a meter for the last 3 or 4 years, and notifying various people who haven't, gotten a list together to figure it out. Maybe, I'm not saying everybody's going to be willing to do that, but maybe you'll be able to finance the cost by the people who are willing, or the people who are just saying, metering is good because it saves water, and that's the whole original purpose of this thing. So, or like the person you had that was willing to pay up front for their taxes a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't hurt them too much. It helped us quite a bit.
Immensely. Mm-hmm.
So you might be able to finance it, but you might know more about that than I.
So I like the idea. My first caution though would be that NEMRC would have to answer if their system could actually do that.
I was wondering that,
Yeah.
How would you track it?
Just
How
building
the tracking of it, right, is the, I mean,
How do you
if
prorate
it was-
someone's bill differently?
No, you build them,
Just a
you
discount
build
on
them
somebody's-
correctly and
Right.
give them a credit. The co-op's doing that on the solar field, because I bought solar panels, and you're getting the money back as a credit on your bill. My
Sure,
bill
but
comes
that's
through with the
they
full
probably have a
thing.
much fancier system than what
NIMRIC does, I have to admit, have a number of capabilities. The fact that it is quirky and one day would not spit out anything but the total dollars.
Right.
And then the next time I came, luckily I got the correct information, and did nothing seemingly different or.
It
You know,
seems like Chip could answer that question
Well,
really easy.
so my short answer is I like the idea. If NEMRC said, oh yeah, that's a piece of cake, then absolutely we should consider it. I mean,
Right,
even
because
if it wasn't
half
a
of our remaining installations said they were willing to do this, it means we don't have to find that money up front.
You aren't gonna find half, but.
Yeah, I had a radical
You might
idea.
get
What if-
50, 75,
what
it's
if-
gonna
yeah.
be high, I think.
This is gonna not be favorable to anybody, but what about like if we need to raise some capital to even buy some damn meters? What about this is unfair, I know.
Keep going.
$100 one-time charge to the people who have been metered to recoup those costs, put them towards the next meters, and then charge the new meter people $100 towards the install cost. Everybody's getting charged $100. That's the owner's
Fair.
contribution,
Fair and equitable.
Sure. I don't know.
Like it,
Well,
but
I
that-
don't get that. We've paid for our meters because that's what the
You got a
infrastructure-
free.
free.
No, you had a
install.
free meter.
Well, we got a free meter, and then they said if we wanted it to actually function, that was just for the experiment. If
Oh,
they
you only
wanted
got the non-functioning meter.
Yeah, well,
No, it was
it was
billing.
just an experiment so that they could figure out whether or not it would work.
Yes, but that was a handful, right? That was 100.
That was 100,
Yeah.
and we got, on that first 100. And then we said to them, well, what if we paid for the meter? Because we got those for free. And we paid $400.
Okay, so take those out, right?
Yeah.
What about
You
all the
didn't
people
have
who got
to.
a
I
meter
can
and didn't
explain
pay
that.
anything for it is Patrick's question, right? And
But
could we
we
just
did.
say,
The rate of
There
With
were only, I believe, 10 people, and they were offered their money back. So, you know, and I don't know whether you took your money back. What it was you got the data meter, they took the data. If you opted to go on being billed on the metered rates, then you had to buy your meter. So we were charged about $500 a meter. And I remember when they came and the council voted, unfortunately, to install the meters for free. At that point, I had paid back basically $400 of my $500 in savings on having a meter.
Wow.
So it was one of those things that, but
But when they said
they
they
offered the money back, and a lot of people took
When
it.
they said they were going to install them for free, it wasn't really for free. All of us were paying
Yeah.
for meters to be installed for everybody. The rate was supposed to
Right.
pay for that.
Right.
The rate went up.
But didn't.
Yeah, because it was never high enough.
Because they didn't continue and fully explain what the situation was.
Nor did they raise the rates
unwilling.
enough to cover the cost of the
And
meters.
it was a two-part, because we kept on voting down meters. There are like 3 votes where we voted down meters, even though we had test meters that proved it. And the information I have is, you know, basically, we've got a lot of people who are underneath the base rate in the meters right now.
But
It's a very interesting thing.
Okay, you're deciding to charge another $100.
I haven't decided
No,
anything.
yeah, be
no,
careful.
I mean,
All we're doing is trying to figure out options.
Yeah.
Take
What I'm saying-
I didn't take shit back, 'cause I
Really?
didn't say it before.
Patrick's name is gonna go down in flames
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Go ahead, finish your statement, Ann. and then
It's-
let's-
but the person who buys their meter up front and puts out the money for it now is gonna get it all back. You could raise rates generally, that solve the general problems of whatever you need to raise rates for, but it's an incentive to pay up front, get your meter, get on the system, help the system.
I'm not
But
arguing, I'm
but you're gonna
arguing.
get your money back, and that's a reason why, I mean, the concept that
But we are not in a position to give anybody money back. Like, let's be real. We have been subsidizing people for 10 years. So, like, don't forget that.
Whatever your rate is now is supposed to pay for what is being used, and whatever is.
But we can't say confidently that those numbers actually do balance out. So, like, we can't work on that assumption.
Well, yeah, but it's gonna keep, if it's less, then you should lower the rate. If it's more, then you're gonna raise the
But
rate.
we can't say until we get it metered, right?
I'm sorry?
We can't say for sure until everything's metered, right?
Right, but we're just talking about
Okay, hold on.
who's gonna
Let's-
want a meter.
Jennifer, did you want to say something before we?
Well, we have another sticky bailiwick that is here, which is
Just one?
meters do not last forever.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, right.
So we have this thing where, yes, the old rate system, the reason you had the sizing there was to go towards buying a new meter. That was basically done away with. Back in 2016, we did the rates. So it was the theory before that you were buying your next meter. But,
With your
you know,
flat rate charge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you remember what year it was? I'm trying to think what year it was we put the 100 meters in.
It was prior to 2016, so it would
I
have
thought, I
been
was thinking around 2010 or a little after that.
later, yeah. I think they were only in for 2 years or possibly 3.
It was,
So just,
12 or 13.
Yeah,
Paul probably would know this. So for the radio reads, you know, maybe a meter with not a lot of flow, the meter itself would be fine. So say it was 2012.
Yeah.
So those meters are 13 years old.
Right.
The batteries are only good for 20.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the meter itself might be, but we're gonna be back replacing the batteries
Yeah.
to
Yes.
those meters.
And
So
we didn't change the ordinance to give it the right to go in and replace the battery.
Right.
Which is.
I'm making a list of ordinance things.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do.
So these are all
There's a
good.
whole group that I can give you from Stacy too.
Go
You know,
into-
I want to add the other thing about, and I'm not disagreeing with it, but you know, typically if a new house goes in, that their plumber will coordinate with the guys at the wastewater plant, and they come get the meter because they have to put the meter in.
Yeah.
then we would bill them for that meter.
So new house
But-
construction buys their meter.
So, but if they were gonna do something like that, they would certainly be getting the meter from us. The meter would be free in the parts to install it, but then that plumber is gonna be sending bills here that now we're creating.
You lost me, Tom.
So
So the city's gonna get a bill
so
if they
what-
give a meter to a guy who installs it for a new construction.
So what Ian was saying, you know, is, hey, if there's people out there who wanna put a meter in,
Right.
that's fine, but they gotta get the meter from us. So we can
Right.
supply the meter and all the parts for free, like we're doing for everybody else. They're gonna pay to have it installed by a plumber, but
Well-
then that plumber's gonna bill the city, which needs to be tracked to go
Oh,
towards credit of.
I think what she was correct me if I'm wrong, I think what she was implying is that those people would be the first ones that your guys went to, not a plumber went to. Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah. That's how I
so-
was thinking about it.
To keep costs low.
Yeah.
To keep the cost low, to try to grab the low hanging fruit, I guess.
But, and there's something else I want to say, but I think part of the issue that was discussed several meetings ago is that it's likely that those people that want a meter already know that they have the spot in the house for the meter, that they're probably, you know, like my friends who, well, no, I'm just saying, what I'm saying is that it was discussed that likely those people who are already like, hey, I want a meter,
I had no idea, and I know a thing about plumbing. I didn't know what the hell.
no, but I think what I'm trying to say is that they're probably going to be the ones that aren't paying the big bills.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get to. There may
That's
be
why
two people
my
or
look, my
four
approach
people.
is trying to find the big bills, you know?
Right, that's what I figured
That's
you
the
were
difference.
doing is
Right.
looking for the properties.
But getting the numbers up is getting the numbers up.
Right.
You know, like,
Yes,
So I
but
think we gotta do
any
both.
way to get it, any way to do
Alright,
it.
so can I ask another question? I'm sorry, are you
Yeah,
finished?
no, it's okay. I have a meter related question, so go ahead. I'll ask that.
Well, I guess, can anybody tell me, like, what does the meter itself cost? And is it standard?
depends.
Or does that change? I assume it changes
Well,
at least based on the diameter of the pipe
it
coming in.
fluctuates a little bit. I didn't get that, I apologize, I didn't get the pricing for them, but it isn't just a meter. So you install the meter with what they call a corner horn. So the meter actually goes within that oval looped corner horn.
Yeah.
On the first thing coming in the house should be a valve. In most cases, most houses will have a valve. They probably don't have the second one. So then we have to actually install a second valve. So that way when we have
In
a
the
problem-
house?
Yes. So then when we have a problem or need to replace that meter down the road,
There's a way to
shut
shut
one
it
valve,
down.
shut the other valve, pull the meter out of that corner horn, slap another one in and you walk out.
Uh-huh.
So you're talking the corner horn, some fittings, possibly a valve and the meter. Might
Expansion
be
tax or not?
I want to hear the end of that sentence. Might be
$400, $450 at most.
plus labor.
No, that's just
That's-
materials.
Yeah, I'm saying plus labor.
Plus, the labor's, yeah.
The labor's in addition to that. Okay. So leaving labor aside for a moment, let's just assume for the moment that the average meter is going to cost us plus corner horn, et cetera. It's going to cost us $500, right? And we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 meters left to install, right? Total.
35,000 just in parts.
Yeah, what is that number?
35,000.
No, it's 350,000, isn't it? 500 times
500 times 700.
You're right.
times.
375 just parts.
Yeah, there we go. So $350,000.
Yeah.
Why don't I have 50,000 in the budget?
That's because that's per year. So we-
Yes, but that actually is the fundamental of that's the underneath for my
Right.
question, right? Part of me says, well, we're gonna pay out of our water and sewer budget one way or the other. If we borrow all this money up front, we're gonna have to pay it back over a number of years, a certain percentage every year. So why not say it's gonna take us 3 years to finish the meters anyway, and just build $125,000 cost per year, or whatever it might be, $150,000 a year cost into the water and sewer budget to do a third of the meters this year, a third of the meters next year, a third of the meters that year after that, and then whatever lower amount will be necessary to turn over batteries or new installations or, replacement installations in the future. So instead of borrowing the money and paying it back, save the interest on it and basically just do it ourselves year by year. Is there something that keeps us from doing that?
When you say do it ourselves.
Well, that's the labor is the big question.
Right.
Right. I get that.
Staff.
And you have
Right.
one more thing, which is unfortunately, all of your prices are gonna go up. And how much is that going to increase? Right now, your water and sewer costs, which are, going to go through quite the increase.
Well, we're adding let's just assume for a moment, we're adding, I don't know, pick a number, $200,000 a year to a $2.8 million total water and sewer budget.
What about our capital?
There is a
set-aside?
5% capital in there, right, that we included this
We
year.
did this year, yeah.
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 So maybe that's what the capital money gets used on for the next 3 years, is just doing water meter installations, though there are other things that are gonna fall apart that we need to
Yeah.
be putting money
Yeah,
aside
which
for.
is,
Can I interject just a little bit?
Please.
Well, I think we've got some action items already. We're not gonna solve the meter thing tonight. I asked Frank to be here so he can talk about the Derby contract, and I want you all to hear what he dug up. And I don't wanna keep him longer. And I
Because he
think
looks like he's about to fall over.
if I can just recap the action items from
That's fine.
this meter conversation, we need you to talk to Patrick Monks.
Yep.
We need you to figure out your guy Joe, what that company is. You said you've got another outfit.
So Tom and I will work together. One of us will contact Joe, one of us will contact Suez.
Okay, Suez. And I can keep working with data to try to come up with lists of targets. But I think we have some creative ideas in terms of recouping costs, charging people, giving them credit. Like, I think we can keep brewing this, but we have a lot of other things on the agenda. And
Right, just one
Sure.
thing real quick. Just everybody needs to remember, as more meters go in, water usage is going to go down,
Yeah.
rates are going to have to go up.
Yes.
Which is why we got to balance all of those things.
Right.
And we don't even have a figure for what it would cost to actually outsource it, so we can't really balance numbers yet. So I think coming up with some figures or some grant sources or whoever financing sources, I think, is the next bag of tricks.
Okay. I think that's a helpful grounding. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other last
What-
words?
My only question is that I went back and looked at, not directly, at the presentation that was done in 2021 by Aldrich and Elliott. And they said something about a water meter that can go in the places where a normal water meter can't go. And I would have to go back and look at it.
Oh.
It's like and it's really not that big.
Yeah, it's a, let Frank talk, it'll come to me.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just, because I know
It makes me feel so much better. Thank you.
we talk about places where the water meters can't go. We talk about problems with water meters and we talk about waste. And loss, not waste, excuse me, water loss. And I'm just thinking, what are these things that we haven't, what is this piece of equipment we haven't looked at yet? Is it something that could benefit us?
Well,
somewhere?
the meter is the meter. They
Yeah.
now have meters that you don't have to have them upright, you can actually have them so that they're sideways. There are there are other ways to try to minimize the space, but realistically, you still need at least a 16-inch by 16-inch little area to be able to install that, generally.
Okay.
Frank, sorry to keep
Well,
you waiting.
no, that's very interesting. I'm glad I'm not you guys. So I'll make a couple comments. First of all, just because I'm here, the water meters were on the original budget from the tower. However, they were never assigned any dollar amount to them. It was zero from the beginning. So they had them, and I'll give you this. I don't know if Patrick, and it's not that one. Go to the operating and administrative costs. I'll give you these hard copies in case you're like I am and you like to be able to feel something, right, John? I know you are. The other thing
I got the note.
is that I am requiring on all new construction water meters.
Wait, come sit.
And nobody has, let me grab my stuff, and nobody has argued with me. However, that's not in the ordinance, I don't have the authority.
It's
Adding it in.
It's right in the allocation.
Yeah.
If it's a new build with an allocation, they have, it says it right in the allocation. They have
What I can tell you is it's not in the ordinance.
Oh, but
It's not
to
in
charge
my-
them for it or just to require them?
To require.
Okay.
It's not in the ordinance and it's not in my zoning bylaws.
Okay.
And nobody has questioned me at all.
And you tell
I
them.
continue to tell them they have to do it, but just, I don't know how that works out legally.
Is it in that other one that we looked at on the planning commission that deals with all the technical specs maybe?
With all the what?
Technical specs, because that seems to overlap the water and sewer ordinances.
Talk about Tom's water,
Yeah,
Tom's.
I don't know
not
if it's in there, but on the actual water allocation sheet,
Yeah.
it says it right on there that at a new build, they have to put the meter in.
That should be supported by the ordinance.
Well, the ordinance needs a lot of
Yeah,
update.
there you go.
Okay. So we've got some points that
So if
were.
somebody ever
But it still
challenges
has,
me.
maybe, but it still has them, the person building it, getting that allocation has their signature right on it saying that, yeah, we're gonna meet this
So I'm writing it
criteria.
right on my building permit, you are required. And there, nobody's challenged it, but it would be nice.
But the enforcement to make sure it was installed is totally separate. Yeah, okay. All right, so
And the ability to, Paul, the ability to, just as a sidelight, the ability to shut the water off for non-payment would significantly help me with the collection of delinquent bills, rather than having to go all the way to it, I'm sorry, Rick, having to go all the way to a tax sale for a relatively insignificant, and waiting, because now I have to wait 12 months until it's, right, so we're a year and a half, 2 years behind before we even go to that process.
You're singing Mr. Tice's tune.
Yeah, so the ability to be able to apply pressure prior to that would help whoever is unfortunate enough to get the job of being the tax collector.
Okay.
Good, so,
First question for you, Frank, is the top of our item on this topic. Did you confirm that the clerks were billing properly?
so this is what I was able to do. I went back and remember, take what I say with a grain of salt. My job was to create a bill for Derby that was consistent with the historical practices and establish that those practices have been applied consistently throughout a 10-year period is what I looked at. And that the math and the formularies that they used were derived, at least in their intent, from the actual agreement that was signed years ago. Okay, so the answer to your question is yes, I do believe so. I believe that based on the information and the way it's been interpreted for well over a decade, I was able to verify how they were doing it, and I do not have I did not find fundamental errors. In other words, I believe that their math is correct. Okay, the conceptual math is also correct. I will tell you that I have significant concerns about this billing, and I think it deserves more attention, but I can cover afterwards. I think the best thing for me to do would be to tell you how it's calculated.
Yes.
So that, all right, so basically this is the work paper, all right, and basically it's divided into 3 categories, the way this bill is done. All right, the meat of it is in this top section, which are basically Derby's portion of the cost of the sewer plant and the sewer collection system. Okay, the numbers that are used to generate Derby's share are directly off the supposed audited balance sheets at the end of the year. Okay, after adjustments. So what happens is that the agreement dictates a formulary or a percentage. For instance, if you take the total sewer cost of $797 for this period of time, then you're going to basically end up applying a ratio. That ratio is derived basically from total Derby flow divided by total sewer flow
Yeah.
equals the percentage of.
They're prorated.
Exactly, and then you basically take that ratio, which in this year was 1.128055, and you times that by what is on the balance sheet at the end of the year in water and sewage under sewer plant of 797, and that gives you 102,066. That percentage and formulary is applied to sewer plant, sewer administration, personal expense.
Okay, pause. At the top, this is all based on the value of 0.075 over 0.59.
Which is derived from the analysis from Jason, okay, who's been doing it.
Quarterly.
He gives us yearly.
Okay.
Okay, and it's the calculation and the tabulation of data has been done the same way for well over a decade.
So they base three upcoming cycles on the annual that's reported for the previous 4 cycles.
No, so what we're doing is this bill that's generated, so this billing that is for F23-24,
Yeah.
okay, is based on data, both flow data and financial data that ended 6/30/24.
So
we're billing behind.
Yeah.
We sent out a bill
Right,
in
okay,
So
okay.
theoretically, we should have sent a bill out in February of 25, okay?
For last year.
The data is through 6/30/24.
Geez, so it's a full 8 months later. Wow, okay. But
And
it
then
has to
we're
wait till
billing-
Jason's report.
And then
isn't
we're
it?
billing that over the next 4 quarters, okay? In addition to that, so what you have initially is you have this calculation of Derby's share of the sewer plant is based on this flow ratio.
Yep.
Okay, and it's applied like that in all these percentage. Now, when we talk about the sewer collection, which is a different cost center on the cost
Yeah,
report,
yeah.
all right, they're using a percentage of the lineal feet of
Wow, okay.
Derby's
system,
portion
yeah.
of the collection lines versus Newport's portion of the collection lines.
So the
right?
difference between plant and collection is basically the cost of maintaining the
line.
the lines themselves? Is that,
And pump
in
stations,
theory at least?
but Derby doesn't have any pump stations.
I totally disagree with the whole fundamental.
But that's the
That's
premise
the
of
way
which
they're
this is
applying.
made.
No, not that we maintain it.
Yes,
This is our agreement, so let's.
it's the agreement,
Yeah.
right?
We'll tackle that later.
Yeah. when
Which
the
is a
agree-
measly $3,700 per year or quarter.
Excuse me?
So the sewer collection portion owed by Derby is $3,700. Is that
A
per
year.
year or quarter? Because
That's for the year.
so for a half a mile, for almost a mile of service line, we're charging them less than $1 per foot per year. That sounds not in favor of actually replacing a sewer line when the time comes.
Well, that portion of that sewer line, the bulk of it's probably theirs anyways.
I was gonna say, who actually owns the sewer line? Was it deeded to us?
That part is done, and my job was to do a bill.
Right.
However,
I
I
could
will tell you that there was an initial breakdown of the asset before it was built as well.
Yeah.
And I think that those proportions were established there, although you would need somebody who is a professional in this area and not a Medicare accountant to.
So I could probably, when the village hooked onto our system, they helped pay for the line. I believe the line, the siphon line that actually goes across the river by Newport Daily. But their actual line that their sewer flow comes through it, comes all the way down the Derby Road and dumps into our system probably around Blanchard Avenue. So that portion up through there, I have nothing to do with.
Okay.
The remaining portion, we do, because we have our system connected to it.
So essentially from Cumberland's down to the plant. Okay. So that's not an unreasonable, I mean, 37 still seems low,
So-
but if you're sharing that line with what you serve in
Size.
generally, yeah.
So I will tell you that the calculation that they're using, the formulary that's in the spreadsheet, and I gave you a copy of the spreadsheet today, and if you want to look at it afterwards and see where it's pulling from, it's consistent with the agreement. I'm not sure I agree with the agreement.
So
Okay.
they're using the DOBs and the phosphorus levels?
Excuse me?
They're using the DOBs and the phosphorus levels to calculate the sewage plant?
No.
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 We already did.
They're
So
using,
Tom
they're using
already answered
they're
no
they're
to that.
prorating it based on their contribution
Right.
sewage and their portion of the line owned.
there you go.
Right.
So it's not
Yeah.
So they're not
BOD.
following the
It's not
agreement.
BOD.
Yeah, the BODs, and Tom said it was checked at one point and it was within the average flows, so they just have not been doing that. I think that's what you said, I should have.
To clarify, Frank, what this means is that we're treating their fair share of wastewater, but if their fair share is full of brewery waste, for instance, it costs him a lot more to
Yeah, but-
treat it.
That is not being factored into,
Yeah.
and has never for a 20-year period been factored into the calculation.
Well,
Because there's no,
no, well, I'd have to look, I can't remember what year it was, we bought a sampler, a
Right.
portable sampler.
Right.
And we tested periodically for quite a while,
Yeah,
and there was no change.
right.
You know, as what Patrick is saying, if there was a brewery, we'd know it. The guy,
Yeah.
or somebody, you know, I said, I think I mentioned it, that somebody had dumped a bulk tank of milk that had gone bad, and within minutes, we had problems, we knew it.
I
So
guess-
their normal sewer is what we're, domestic sewer that we're getting around the sewer.
Right,
But
and-
that being said, doesn't mean that maybe we should be testing once
least-
a year randomly.
Right, spot checking it once
Yeah.
a year, I mean, just to make sure, because, you know, because you've got your phosphorus levels, your BOD levels, I mean, all those are supposed to be per the agreement.
yeah.
I mean,
So it sounds like they may have done a sample run to verify
just
that
say-
it's the same,
right,
it's the same juice coming from both
So
directions.
I don't disagree with what Paul's saying. What I am telling you is that they have established a protocol, okay? And that protocol actually does indicate a standardized approach to this, and they've been following it.
Right.
I think if you're going to change that dramatically, you can't just arbitrarily do it. You're gonna have to have a conversation with them. And again, going back to the fact that I was just making sure that we build this year consistent with how we've been billing before, and that it was supported by the facts, that the numbers came from the right place, so on and so forth.
well, I think my thought on what should happen is you have an agreement, you do your spot check, see if that spot check correlates with the way it's historically been done. If it does, then you rewrite the agreement to represent how it's actually gonna be billed. You don't arbitrarily change things and say, close
Good
enough.
enough, yeah.
I agree 100% with that, and actually I can point out a couple spots I take a look at too. The thing is when you establish an accounting procedure and a billing process for 20 years, it does sort of set precedents.
Yeah.
And we were 3 months behind, we need to get the bill out, we want to do it consistent with how it's been done in the past.
Which, just to be clear, has now been done. The bill has been sent for what is effectively last year's bill, right?
Right.
Frank?
Yeah,
To be paid for the coming year.
So the billing is calculated 8 months
this
in
is the billing,
arrears, and
this
then-
is the actual work paper that created the bill.
Yeah,
This is what I used.
But he's asking about the timeline for
Yeah,
which it was
yeah,
created.
so the bill, so this is the bill for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 24.
Which is paid in the 4 quarters of 25, basically.
So effectively, it's a year plus behind by the time the final installment is paid.
I have asked for it to be paid by August this year, and I have not got an answer yet, but I think that we
I think
may-
it's their intention from, I mean, there was an implication in an email that they would hope to try and get earlier.
Okay, because this was supposed to have been billed earlier?
February.
February of.
Generally, they've been doing it in February, so they would bill it in early in February 25, and then the first installment would be due 1st of April, end of March, and then quarterly
So
thereafter.
there was a
Based
bill
on the
that went
audit.
out in February of 24 then?
There was a bill that went out in February of 24, yes. And that would have been for the previous
Right.
ending 6/30.
Right, so what we were behind on was that we had not done a bill in February of this year.
Yeah, I was just trying to clarify
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
we were just a
So-
few months behind or a year and a few months.
Correct, it was just
There-
several months.
So they owe us 130 grand, it sounds
No.
like.
109 or so.
Yeah, because can you describe that, Frank, what the two
Yeah.
backs to them are?
Yeah.
So basically what happened is that the initial portion of the calculation is based on those cost centers, and it uses basically a flow ratio and a lineal foot ratio as far as ownership goes. Then what they do is they take the total amount out of the cost reports under categories administratively, okay, and then the city gets credit at 0.02%, which is very low, okay, to the tune of $9,675.
Credit, what do you
Okay,
mean by that?
that means that the total that we should have billed, or would bill for this period is 145.48. Then you take what was paid during that same period, okay, which was 128,277 by Derby, and they owe us an additional $12,000.
Okay, so they're paying ahead of time, anticipating last year's plus or minus.
And then there's a true up.
Yes.
Right,
Okay.
and we ended up to the good by $12,000. Unfortunately, we also agreed, I don't know why, to give them a portion of our septage income,
Okay.
okay, which is less the income share. The septic income in this last fiscal year was 185,000, which was
Wow.
up almost double over the previous year. And somehow, and this has been the formulary I don't agree with, however, it has been applied at the exact same percentage for 15 years. Of 12% of that revenue gets credited toward their invoice to the tune of $21,000. Okay, which means that the sure up for this year is $9,000 in their favor. Correct.
Because they owed us
Oh.
12,271, but the septage income that we owed them was 21,414, leaving a balance of 9,000 that
And this
we owe
is
them.
because in theory they own part of the plant.
Part of the plan, yeah.
Yes.
And the percentage is based on the
12%.
percentage of the plant that they
They have
own.
used a flat 12% for as long as I can
And 12
see.
and 12
I don't know that I agree with that. I'm sure you don't as well, Tom, but.
Yeah, I always thought it was
Yeah.
11 or 13 is what I always thought.
Yeah,
but
12.
12.
11.1156 is what.
Which is different because the percent flow is
Exactly.
12.8.
Exactly. Okay, so you have this deal where, okay, we got $140,000 in what their share would be, okay, basically after the true up of what they paid, okay? Then we're going to give them a credit, which is 12% of Tom's total septage for the year, 185. That credits them back, so you end up having, that affects, that is the true up. It's that revenue sharing that ends up really being the true up. Now, if you want an opinion,
Oh,
okay,
I got one.
yeah, if you want an opinion, I'll give you this. Okay, I'll give you three things to consider. And again, wasn't what I was looking at. What I can tell you is that my calculation in the billing is exactly consistent to what has been done on a consistent basis for a 10-year period. My trouble was verifying where the numbers came from out of the financials, because to be quite honest with you, I couldn't tie the balance sheet to the audited financial statements. So I ended up having to go back 5 years just to make sure I wasn't making an error where I pulled these numbers from. And I was able to confirm that I was getting them from the right spot.
So, just to sum that up, and then we can move on. This bill that we just submitted to them is reliable,
Right.
based on previous history.
Based on history. Now, if we want to talk about the rest of it, and again, I didn't get into this, and I'll offer an opinion. So first of all, I understand where they're getting their formulary from, but something doesn't add up, and I wonder if it's in the way we're recording our cost. The total cost of the sewer and water plant for this period was 1.751, okay? And if I take and apply the flow ratio,
12%.
which is in my mind, the average cost per gallon of flow is a truer understanding of what it's actually costing us to treat sewage, correct? So if you have total cost divided by total flow, that gives you your, you know, average cost to treat a specific unit, right, Paul, is my thought, okay. If I apply,
Yeah.
what's that?
Yeah. Sorry,
Keep
go
going.
ahead. Sorry.
Keep going.
Sorry. I just did the math that you're about to explain.
So if I take the sewer plant and say, okay, Patrick's saying 1.28%, that's correct, that's their percent of flow, and I take 1.7, which is total cost, and I times that by 0.12, which is the flow rate, I'm coming up with $224,000 in Derby's share.
Which is
And
what
all-
it costs us to operate the plant that they own 12%.
Which is a truer, in my mind, a truer representation of what the cost is.
So,
The way we apply this thing, because of this agreement, I'm only getting $140,000 worth of door, and then I'm turning around and giving them 12% of our revenue
But
that's outside.
they don't own 12% because they own 12% of the initial
Exactly.
treatment plant, not the
the whole
upgraded
built
treatment.
out.
So
Also not the
fundamentally,
depreciated value of the plant,
Correct.
right? Is that right?
Yeah.
we're missing we're not reporting, I'm wondering if we're reporting our expenses in the right category. Okay, because my opinion, uneducated opinion, okay, is that the sewer plant of 797, if I add these 5 categories together, and I come up with 1.2 million at the top, okay, I think that the cost should include the other 500,000 that's not in there. Okay, so do you understand?
What 500,000, sorry.
The difference between, so if you look at the calculation of the 130, which is the meat of this bill, okay, the numbers that's calculated from are on the left here, and they total 1.2 million, or sorry, 1.210,762. Okay, the total cost, the total expense to run the sewer plant, the sewer operation, to treat the water during that same period is 1.7 million. So my question is, are we reporting all of our expense into the right cost category?
Yeah. Which is gonna, in turn, actually change Derby's own share.
Yeah.
I do not know the answer to that question. That's part of what I thought maybe you and I could wrap our mind around at some point in the future.
I mean, I think if like we moved water meters out of sewer, they're now in water. So we know that at least that line item has been cleaned up for sewer fund costs. I mean, I don't know how solid we are with like the personnel expenses for the sewer department, and if they are fully representative of just sewer plant work, or if there's other gray areas tied into it, but like that could potentially change what Derby owes.
In my mind, I'm trying to think about, when I looked at it, I said, what is Tom's sewer budget does not constitute expense
Yeah,
related to the
to Derby.
treatment of that flow?
And Derby's
And
responsibility.
why are we arbitrarily not recording that within that expense line that I could grab from? So I grabbed from a line item called sewer plant. I did not dictate what expense went into that line item.
Yeah.
And common sense dictates to me that the total cost of treating a gallon of sewer, okay, includes all of the costs of including depreciation, including payments, including all those things. And again, this is just a fundamental financial opinion, not one that's educated based on as a water and sewer
So-
professional.
Because like, if you just look at, I don't have the actuals for 24, 25, but if you look at the actuals for 23, 24, and you go through, just a second, go through, that's the income, you go through sewer collection, you go through admin, personnel, other capital improvements, you go through everything, debt service, you're looking at an actual of 1.8 million for sewer.
And the way their formularies.
Hold on. Complete the thought.
So, and we're not even close to that on what the numbers we're using for the calculation.
Right. And those numbers are pulled from a specific line item off the cost report, and we have pulled those numbers from the same exact spot for 10 years. My question is, so I know I know that my math is correct, and I'm pulling
Right.
it. The question is why is the rest of this expense not included in those line items?
Right. Exactly.
And why is the allocation excluding that out of those line items? Because if it had been in there, I could have grabbed it and included, of course, it would have changed their bill, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they would have screamed and hollered bloody murder.
Right.
So,
No,
hold
I
on,
mean,
can I
they're gonna,
restate this so I can write it down? Why aren't all of the sewer expenses associated with the entirety of the plant included in the number used to determine their prorate, or their share, or their proportional bill, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're only including $1.2 million of the total expense.
well, because
I know, I read the stupid thing.
Because, I mean, if you look at the personnel expenses, I mean, that's one person. How,
It doesn't look equitable to me. Do you agree, Paul?
But you're,
Okay.
no, yeah.
so back up, Frank. So you're using the total sewer, the 1.8, Paul, that you mentioned, 1.8 million.
Yep,
That is the total sewer budget,
Expense.
Correct.
total. So
yeah,
now, if you want to look at, well, sewer collection is separate from the plant.
It is.
But that's, you know, that's our system.
Right.
That's
DPW.
public works staff, that's not the guys at the wastewater plant. I agree that the
Well-
wastewater plant expense and some capital costs, admin costs, certainly.
In my mind, the
Hold on, I want
maintenance
to
of
get you to
this,
Tom, please, just.
And any upgrade costs that we had, any loans that we got out there that were pertaining to the plant, like the last upgrade, I would assume would go to that. But as far as the collection side of it,
but,
Well, there is a provision in here that talks about allocation of capital expenses based upon the designated capacity. So if Derby owns, just to use a percentage, 10% of the capacity, then they should be paying 10% of all subsequent capital expenses for capital expenditures required to keep the system going.
well, right,
And the debt services, all the other subjects are included basically in our budget. Sewer plant, collection, administration, personnel, and insurance. And the next one down, other than capital, which doesn't have a lot in it right now, is debt services, which is for 23, 24, $375,498. So there's about $400,000. It seems to me that they
Go ahead.
should be paying part of the debt.
Sure, and now I can't help but wonder what they bill their residents.
so I
That's
just,
a great question.
yeah.
You know, like,
So, personnel expenses, right? That 89,595. That is literally the only thing we're billing them for on the personal side of things is unemployment compensation, worker compensation, health insurance, FICA, retirement, life insurance, employee disabilities, education, health savings account, and health insurance HRA.
correct.
Does not even include salaries.
you're saying
Personnel
this-
salaries are in a different section though, but personnel
That was
expense,
in
oh,
there.
They'd be
no,
on
Under
the
sewer
plant.
plant.
They'd be under the plant.
be under the plan.
That's in the 797,000.
It is, okay.
So I don't disagree with what Tom's saying, however, and then John's right, that this agreement sort of limits what you can do. My suggestion is this. I do not believe that you have all the expenses in the right categories. I think you could increase I think legitimately, if you took a harder look, I think Paul is is approaching it, it has the same approach. It doesn't add up, okay? The amount of cost associated with treating a gallon doesn't add up at all, and that should force you to see whether or not you've got all of your expenses in the right category, so that when I pull these numbers off this balance sheet, that I'm not missing a whole bunch of expense that should be in there.
And that goes back to like our second meeting where I pointed out salaries under line named as repair and maintenance.
Are ridiculous.
Right. Anything associated with a person needs to be in its own category with its own general ledger code.
Yep. So, okay, let's pause there for a moment.
Yeah.
Within a reasonable amount of time that I cannot yet define, but I suspect we're talking a couple of months tops, Chip will have some recommendations for us about how to clean up the general ledger in both operating and water and sewer. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of argument from this group or the finance task force about recommending to council that we follow his recommendations. So I suspect that we will manage that problem very quickly, and then we will have a new general ledger that clarifies exactly the questions you're raising. At which point, we should be able to make a logical case for what it's really costing us to treat the sewage waste that we're taking from Derby.
So every single row in that ledger that you apply toward this subset cost, subtotal, whatever, we have to explain. There cannot be just this arbitrary.
That's right.
There's
But
got
once
to be a
we have-
description column that says exactly what that code means, and more than just like personnel. you
That's
know?
right. Once we have a new general ledger that isn't 30 years old, that's been modified many, many multiples of times over the last 30 years, right? I think we will have we can make a logical case for that. At which point, it seems to me, probably sometime next fall, it will make sense for us to say to the Village of Derby, we'd like to sit down and revisit the original agreement and what it's actually costing us to run this plant and have a new conversation here.
Right. What? Yeah. So
After July.
I have a comment on that, but
I chose my timing with care.
so just one thing on the budgeting and general ledger. I mean, I'm sure, I believe that, I don't know Chip, but with his experience, that he would leave room. But whatever general ledger code he comes up with needs to have enough space in the numbers that stuff can be added without.
That is absolutely what he's working toward.
Okay.
There's not a doubt in my mind.
Because it's very
Or he's
obvious
done now, but I know
how
that's what
stuff
he's
got
done.
added, because you can look, well, there was no more numbers left in that
So
series.
they just moved it somewhere else.
Just moved it somewhere else.
That's right. No, that's the whole point, is to make the system, the ledger system, expandable or contractible
Yeah.
with an easy
Right.
change.
And I just got one derailing question, but like, is this easy to implement in the clerk's office and for?
Yes, it will be relatively easy to implement because it's still NEMRIC. And NEMRIC is online, so Chip will actually institute most of these changes, and then our office will simply have to learn the new codes.
Now,
Okay, all right, that's all I have.
back on your sit down with Derby, I mean, if we work through this and come up with a detailed explanation of how things have been calculated wrong, you may not need to renegotiate the contract. You may have to change things on our side where Tom does a DOB and phosphorus sampling once a year to confirm and stuff like that. But I think the bigger explanation is going to be that, hey, we messed up and you guys have not been being billed properly, and
I think there's
We're
wiggle,
willing to forgive
you better get
it was our
ready.
bad in the past, but we're not
Right.
gonna do it going
I
forward.
think that there's wiggle room for the classification of expense within some of these categories, within the language, even though it does tie you up. And I think that we just need to clearly identify what expense has not historically been included in these cost centers, which has caused us not to be able to recoup our expense.
Right, because
Basically.
I do give the creators of
the agreement some credit, because that formula does take into account if somebody builds a brewery in Derby.
Oh, yeah.
It really safeguards Newport.
If it's being implemented.
If it's being implemented and followed, exactly. They thought it through. Unfortunately, we
Yeah, the
didn't.
devil was in the implementation.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's getting clearer what the problem is, and that's all we're asking for at this stage, right? And I've said this to Frank, and I'll say it with all of you present. I'm really grateful because I didn't have the foggiest idea how to go back and figure out how to create this bill that was 3 months overdue. And I'm confident that this number he's come up with is a rational way to go about it, given the past practice, which buys us some time until we can get to next year where we have a new conversation.
Sorry, everybody.
There are a couple of things that are really strange that I just want to point out. If you look at the calculation and the percentage that Derby is giving us off our administrative cost, we're talking about 0.02% or $9,000 for the year. And I gotta argue, Tom, you would know better than this, than I, but I gotta argue that when I talk about at least the treasurer and clerk's office, that the proportion of their time to deal with collection and billing of water and sewage is a hell of a lot higher than 0.02%.
No, but I wonder if 0.02% is number of residents in Derby compared to number of billable accounts in Newport.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
It doesn't, because we don't issue bills to
We're
residents.
not the ones billing
We
them,
issue them.
right?
But so
If
that's
if
a
that
question.
number,
Where did the
Tom, sound enormously low to you, that it's costing us, that we're only attributing 0.02% of $9,000 of 500 grand in salaries to Derby's percentage, when we turn around and give them 12% of the revenue that is being deduced? So we're giving them 12% of the revenue, but the administrative percent, we're only getting 0.02% back. That doesn't make any sense in the world to me. So I'm
I think
not
we just
sure.
highlight the question, set it to one side, and stay focused on the task at hand.
Okay.
I think the other thing too would be, I understand your thoughts and it makes sense as far as taking the total cost and then, what's 12% of that, and that should be their cost to, or that we bill them. But listening to that, I think we need to look at my expenditures of what actually should be their cost, and then get that.
That's
total.
right.
Yeah.
If you go to debt service, there is the plant upgrades we're still paying on. 216,000 and change, and then the interest of 22,000 and change. That certainly is going to be in there, but under that debt service for Preview Pump Station, they wouldn't be paying for that. We should take the items in here, total that up. That really
before we send the bill, are you saying?
and going on the assumption that you were saying 12% of that 1.8 million, it may only be $1 million. And then see where that comes in as far as, are we close to what we're currently doing?
Well, I mean, it says it is the operating cost of hydraulically related items, the operating cost of BOD related items, the operating cost of phosphorus related items, and then you take those and you times that, you work out that formula, and then you times those by all other operating cost plus administrative cost. All other operating cost.
So, but with the administrative costs,
But are they, are they interpreting all of the costs of just the plant, or they're not incorporating our sewer collection system, is what I'm saying.
For the
That's the
plant.
way-
For the plant.
Right.
Yes.
Well, that's what I meant.
Calculation, but there's a separate calculation for the collection system,
Yes.
and the language is relatively the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
Exactly.
collection system, I believe, is just the shared one that they're actually using, not our overall
Of course
collection
not.
system. That's what I'm getting at. So my total budget for sewer is 1.8 and change. We might be looking at, say, $1 million, taking out sewer collection, which is.
for the city of Newport only. Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay, so my question is, we can't possibly justify $447,000 in administrative costs for the sewer?
No, that's the total cost for the categories for the entire city.
Yeah, so why, I mean, 1/50th of that total cost.
Because that's what's put in the budget, in the line items.
I don't understand your question, Patrick.
0.02 sounds like a really low percentage, but $447,000 is way more than what administratively is spent on just the sewer.
447 is the administrative expense on water and sewage and the general fund.
Because
And then we're gonna turn around and allocate a percentage of that to the sewer account, and that percentage is 0.02% of the total cost.
right.
And that, the 0.02% is the mystery, where did this come from, right?
So sewer administration, like our audited actuals for sewer, this column, is 76,000.
That's gotta be Jason, right?
Well, that's sewer administration.
That's administration. That's what I'm saying, this 447 figure is way in excess of what we really should be reporting for administrative due to the sewer plant.
No, this is, those are what's due to all operations in the city, including the general.
And then
fund.
they're timesing it by,
And then they're using they're applying a percentage to it to calculate the sewer department's percentage of that. And the way that's been applied for a decade is the total cost of these four areas for the general budget, the water budget, and the
Okay.
sewer budget is 447.
So-
Right? The historical calculation or ratio that they're using to calculate the sewer portion is 0.02%. It basically is what it works out to be, or $9,600.
The sewer portion for just Derby
For
is
just
0.02 of our entire administrative
See,
overhead.
I just don't like that we're using our
I get
entire
it.
administrative overhead as
As the
the sum
basis.
total.
We'll rewrite the agreement when we get there.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, it just
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Agree.
here's how wrong, you're spot on, and here's how wrong it is.
Okay.
So 0.02 of that number is $9,000. And in our sewer budget, we have 76,000 in administrative cost. In our water budget, we have 75,000 in administrative cost. So $160,000 in administrative cost.
For the sewer plant.
Sewer and water, sewer, 76 for sewer. I was stuck on sewer and water, sorry, we're just talking sewer. So 76,000 versus 9,000.
But what's intriguing about that, when you do it that way, is that we're back to 12%. 9,000 is roughly 12% of that $76,000,
Right.
right?
Roughly, yeah.
So that 12% ownership, actually, maybe we've come full circle.
But-
And in that way, it's an appropriate number.
We don't know if truly all the administrative costs are in that
We
budget.
don't.
I was gonna say, cause like, does Stacy bill to sewer when she runs sewer bills?
They won't be because we lowered that percentage.
Yeah, so it looks like to me is
Not
that.
for
and
sewer,
then-
we didn't,
and
we lowered it
again,
for water.
We're getting
That's
out
right,
of
we
the
did for
billing
sewer.
portion of it, but it looks like to me, honestly, that the sewer administration does not count, in the way this calculation's done, would not count the city manager or Stacy or any of those hours. Okay, that is somehow is from somewhere else. Now, the problem is that if that sewer administration, it can't count all that allocation, we're allocating 50% of it back then. 50% of the city manager, 50% of the downstairs, so that 76 has nothing to do with these administrative expenses.
So the definition of administrative expenses in the actual agreement is, I'll just read it, it's pretty,
Yep.
not that
We
long.
love you for it, John, go for it.
Those general costs associated with the operation and maintenance of a sewerage system and a sewage treatment plant. These costs may include, but are not necessarily limited to, salary costs of bookkeepers, clerical personnel, secretarial and supervisory personnel, payroll costs, excluding actual payroll, which is covered up above in salary. Office supplies and expenses and accounting and legal fees.
So is that sewer administration or administrative cost?
It's any administrative costs that can be associated with sewer.
So that's
this year,
separate from
just to be
sewer
clear, fiscal
administration.
year 25-26, where we ended up is that we billed 10% of the administrative costs from the operating budget, which is to say 10% of whatever combined total we're gonna have for city manager and office administrator went to water and sewer, 5% each. So 5% of those salaries went to sewer. And then downstairs, 12.5% of the expenses to manage the treasurer and clerk's office went to just sewer. So that's what's in the fiscal year 25-26 budget
However,
for shared
John, this
administrative
is what
beyond
I-
any kind of cost to run the plant.
Well,
Oh,
also in
goodness.
sewer administration,
I
Tom's
believe that
33.
what John just covered.
Yes.
and.
I'm saying, right, this is
33%.
beyond the cost of actually managing the plant itself. This is just the administrative and
Sewer
over here.
administration includes
That's
under
correct.
what the description of what his is. This is something separate. Okay? This is where all the billing and all that stuff takes place.
These general categories come right out of the budget.
They come right out of the water and sewer budget.
And then this
Yes. And I'm not saying it's wrong, and I think John's right. The thing is what I'm saying is that this number is woefully low, in my opinion, of the percentage of costs associated with this, but I think it is dictated by the agreement. Do you see what I mean, Paul?
I do see what
Am
you're
I
saying. And I,
Because what he just described is all the expense here, not here. And this looks like Jason's salary, 76,000,
but
doesn't it?
it's not. It's
You under admin?
Huh?
Well, what's the,
Sewer administration?
that's mine.
That's yours.
Jason's under the planner.
He's under the plan.
So, are you sure?
It's
And the
yours.
reason I asked
Yes, I'm
that
positive.
is because, so that number matches this number, and here's what's in there. That's the actual.
Yeah,
Yeah. So all that,
so whose salary is this?
exactly.
And how much is it?
76,000, well,
So it's not just, I mean, because it would only be a
Well,
third.
no, because it's not just mine, it was.
I just.
So this-
He's part of the city
Because that's
manager.
about right.
This is,
Yeah.
so if this helps, this is the 850-5911. 850-5911. Does that ring a bell? That's the general ledger number.
It's potentially the city manager and the
It's the-
administrator.
That's right, it's a third of Tom's salary, and at that time, 60% of the city manager's salary, and 45% of the,
Half it,
admin.
half it.
half of that, sorry, thank you, half of those two. So that's where the number comes
So
from,
if
you're
we're
right. it's-
allocating that once and then we're turning around
We're
and getting
double
it
dipping.
again, we're double dipping.
I'm not even gonna try to read it. but if
That's correct, isn't it? I didn't wanna say that out loud.
I didn't either, but
If you look at pages 15 through 17 of the ordinance.
So you're already
Hold on,
allocating
hold
it.
on,
Oh, yeah.
John,
Yeah, there's a 3-page explanation for allocating some of this on pages 15 through 18 of the ordinance. I'm not even going to try to summarize the math inherent in it, but that's something to look at.
so here's my takeaway, everybody. The bottom line here is, it makes no sense for us to try and, we have a 3-step process. One, make sure we build some reasonable, rational number for the build we were behind on, that's done.
Yep.
2, clean up the general ledger and make sure we understand our own allocations and how they're being done. And 3, go back and look at the original plan, figure out if we've been doing it correctly, create an honest accounting of where we've been double dipping or not dipping enough, because both these both things seem to be true. And then finally, with that information, we ask for a meeting with Derby and we go and sit down and have this conversation.
Because the numbers they're pulling for that, once the general ledger's changed, they're going to have to recreate it anyway. Because
Right,
all the
that's
general ledger numbers are gonna change.
Right, but it makes no sense. This conversation is very helpful because
yeah.
I think we all have a far better understanding of how we got where we are, right?
Thank you,
But-
Frank.
The only thing I'm
That's
gonna
right.
tell you is if you're gonna make some changes in the way this is allocated, so next year you can pull different numbers, you have to do it before the end of the fiscal year, the audit.
Well, that's not possible. That, there are no change, I will just tell you right now, there is no way we're gonna go after this between now and June
No, what I
30th.
mean though is this, let's say that we don't believe that we're putting all of the right expense into sewer plant. Okay, and my billing, well, hopefully not mine, but somebody's billing will go out next year in February. Okay, whatever numbers are finalized in August at the audit is what you're stuck with. So if you do not change the way it's
Okay, so I didn't mean
allocated.
to misspeak. It is very possible, I hope, that Chip will have some numbers for the council to take action on for a cleaned up general ledger. And that will give us the foundation for what you're talking about,
Well-
maybe before the end of June.
I was gonna say, shouldn't the general ledger change coincide with a fiscal year
In
change?
an ideal world, yes.
Yeah.
But before Chip can even get to this, the highest priority that he's working on every day right now is just making sure that we understand and we are doing our current balance sheet correctly, which we have not been. So he's cleaning up dozens of problems on the balance sheet to make sure we start from a clean place.
So is somebody like Tom going to explain to him that when he sees a line item called repair and maintenance in some category?
Yes,
that it's
when we get to the point where we're working on this, Tom will absolutely be a part of that conversation.
Okay,
Yes.
so that somebody can say, it's not really repair
Yeah,
and
and frankly, I
maintenance.
expect that what we'll be doing actually is inviting Chip into at least one meeting with all of you.
Right.
To just say, to have Chip say, here's what I see when I look at this. What do you all see? And just make sure he's thinking
Yep.
broadly enough.
Yeah, however he changes it, I understand where you're coming from,
Yep.
Paul, because when you first brought this out.
Right, it has to have the general ledger numbers.
Yeah,
Right.
and I said, yeah, I don't use that, doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
I remember
right.
that conversation.
The expenditure.
Right.
And I know where my salaries are, and there's no confusion because it's on our timesheets.
Yes, but there's
But-
no confusion for you. There's confusion for everybody
No,
else.
no, I get
Right.
that, but.
The
yes.
layman that looks at this looks at the description, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it makes sense that you understand it. You're inside it every week, right? And none of the rest of us are.
Yeah.
So I think for tonight, we've done what we can. Again, with great appreciation to Frank for trying to kind of pull all this out. And we know what the order is here too, right? We get Chip to work on this stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe, in a perfect world, we have some numbers to look at 4 or 5 weeks down the road that we can recommend changes on with the council before the end of June.
so Patrick, will you send us all your
No, so
what
now
you
you
were
have
typing?
disregard the first one, I'll send you.
Yes, please.
And so that makes me think that one of the things I need to do as we're talking with Chip, with the finance group, is make it clear that there actually is a timeline and that we really are hoping that we can get to the general ledger cleanup by the end of fiscal year, because I had not computed that in my own head yet. But you're absolutely right. It only makes sense to make that change, if we can, before the first of the year, so that our accounting is consistent
clean
throughout.
break.
Exactly.
The first of the fiscal year.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
First of the fiscal year. Okay.
Hope I didn't make it worse.
No, you may, I mean, I don't know how you
Sorry.
could make it worse.
I know. Thanks, Frank.
Goes right here, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
That one goes here.
You don't need me anymore, do
Do
you?
we have to do more tonight?
No.
I think we've covered a lot of territory as it is.
Yeah, Patrick.
I found the sewer revenue and expenses budget actual for 24.5 and 25.6 for Derby Village.
What you're looking at is Derby Line, not Derby
Oh,
Village.
damn it!
I noticed that.
Kill him, you're gone. Alright, forget it.
Build bike.
And
I
Derby,
didn't get any further.
Derby Line's not a good example
Yeah.
because it's all
Yeah.
tied into the Rock Island Stansted system.
Exactly, right.
It's one of its kind, you know. They have to go to the US Congress to get some of their things changed.
When is this group meeting again?
We haven't decided that yet.
Oh, yeah, we
That's
should
the next question.
Yep.
Life in computer world.
Yeah. Okay, so this and this.
I'm going for a week. I'm back on Thursdays.
And if you are on Thursdays, I think that's your week where it has to be later. Is that right, John?
No, it's actually tomorrow that was the issue, the fourth
Oh.
Thursday.
So you could meet Thursday the 29th at 6:30.
Yes.
If you do that, I won't be here, and that's just fine with me. In
Are we
fact,
supposed to
it might
take
even be
that
preferable.
personally?
Okay, so wait, what are we talking about?
Thursday night next week, 6:30.
Is that time enough for people to do blood work in between, or?
Can we recap what that is? I'm gonna try to get more data from Frank to do some priority stuff. I can keep looking into seeing, I don't know much of a rabbit hole this is, but looking up Derby's rates. You're gonna talk to,
I'm going to go back to the water conservation folks
right,
and have a conversation about whether there's money out there to help us with meter installs
and then timeline for Chip.
and a timeline for Chip. Those are the two things on my agenda.
And I'm gonna see about what you need for
Yes.
information.
Yeah.
Address.
Meter addresses.
And then I'm trying to flow, and there's a little bit of a glitch in there. What our new rates are gonna be based on what was utilized in this particular billing, which is not the same as our average, but just to give everybody a comparative.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is the 29th reasonable?
Let's really try.
Okay.
Is there any, like, vendors that we need? We're not gonna get numbers from vendors within a week for really vague ask for, like,
I don't see why not.
you think? Okay.
Yeah. Dave's a pretty good guy, so.
Do we know what we're asking for? Just like a ballpark range, you know, per unit of a typical installation at a scale of up to 1,000?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It'll be your typical 5/8 house meter, installed. We'll just get a number for that. And then, Tom, if you can find what Joe gave you, let me know, I can make that call or contact. If you can't, just let me know and I can text Joe and see. I'm sure he will reply pretty quick.
Yeah, I can look into that. Just for reference, so, yeah, we had budgeted 38,000 in water, 38,000 in sewer for meters, $76,000, and to date, we've spent $67,496 on water meters and permits.
And do you have any idea how many water meters that is?
I'd have to ask Jason. how
I'd
many.
be interested to know.
And it could be, I know we just ordered a bunch, so we might have 20 sitting on the shelf that we just got too.
I'd love to know that, actually.
So,
Because that would actually give us a very interesting kind of current understanding of what it really costs to buy the equipment and materials.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to turn off the notes because I think we're done. Is that right?
So May 29th, 6:30. Frank
Please,
voted
Lord.
with his feet.
Yeah, I can be there.
I don't want to be invited again.
I might zoom.
I know.
Okay.